All right, fans, I am joined now by the chosen one, Mitch Huff. How are you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing well, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this week's The Final Count Spotlight. Definitely glad to have you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yes, yes. And so let's get right into it. With everybody has their story of how they first got into wrestling. What was it, grandpa or grandma that got them into it, mom or dad? Everybody has that one something that got them into wanting to get into the pro wrestling business. That got their attention as a kid or whatever that may be. When did you decide to get into the pro wrestling business?
Okay, good. Yeah. Absolutely. So I've been a fan my whole life. Um, since I can remember. My earliest memories of like a TV moment that I remember like as a kid, the one that sticks out to me still is Shawn Michaels putting Marty Jannetty through the barbershop window. Like for whatever reason, that one like vividly sticks out to me. Um, but I can't remember what year that was. But I was watching before then. Like I was a big Hulkamaniac, and I have pictures of my mom took me and my brother to see Hulk Hogan versus I think it was Slaughter, Sergeant Slaughter at a house show at Louisville Gardens, and I mean it had to be five, and it's we could not wait to see Hulk Hogan. Right, we couldn't wait. I had the big foam finger, all that. We get there, we're waiting, and then they make the announcement over the loudspeaker. Due to a scheduling conflict, Hulk Hogan will not be taking on Sergeant Slaughter tonight, but in his place is the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh wow.
Uh, so that was first. But so I've been going to wrestling and a fan. I had to be 4 or 5, like 5 years old, 6 years old at that time, and I've been a fan ever since. And I mean, started watching then. I continued watching, about 90. So my timeline of, like I said, when I first started watching it, I was a Hulkamaniac, no doubt about it. And then I slowly turned into a Bret Hart fan, right? Which was actually the transition that WWE was making. I didn't understand it at the time that that's
Right.
who, they're positioning a new top guy. And then about 95, I started really liking Shawn Michaels. And of course, they started pushing him, boyhood dream, right? And then, so this is old school, right? So me and my brother used to, there was what was it called? There was but it was a VHS rental store in our
Mm.
neighborhood, basically. A little neighborhood, you could rent movies. They had a wrestling section.
Yeah.
We went there and we rented the VHS, not DVD, VHS of Shawn Michaels' Boyhood Dream. And it was
Wow.
like a collaboration, like a story documentary, but it was like 5 matches from 6 matches from 96. And we watched them and we just, like every kid did, we pulled the couch cushions off and made a ring, and we just
Yeah.
emulated the matches. And then the funny thing about wrestling is like like wrestling fans, as you know, are like we're very like-minded people. And
Mm.
back then, like it used to kind of be what's taboo to be a wrestling fan, and like so you'd go to school and you'd meet another wrestling fan and you'd be like, oh, you watch wrestling, you
Yeah.
watch wrestling? And but I was strictly WWF guy, right? I had no idea WCW even existed. And a kid in my neighborhood had a trampoline. So what we start wrestling on the trampoline like kids do, right? And he's like, man, you like wrestling? I like wrestling. And I said, yeah, I sure do. And he's like, who's your favorite? And I'm like, oh man, I like Shawn Michaels. And he's like, I like Sting. I'm like, who? Who's Sting? Who's Sting? I've never
Right.
heard WCW. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I mean, I watch WWF. There ain't no Sting in WWF. And he was like, no, he's in WCW. I'm like, what is WCW? And he literally, this is like 95 ish, 96, whatever. He takes me in his house. He has a video game. I think WCW versus the world. And we start playing this. And now I'm like, holy crap, there's more wrestling. So I start watching, but I never stopped to answer your question. Like, and I, I got really big into, I was a really good athlete. I was a basketball player. And that kind of took my focus 6th, 7th, 8th grade on. And that's I got to get into that to really answer your question. But I never stopped. I mean, I was all, even like during all that time, I'd watch the Monday Night Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I remember specifically, like my parents, like we fell on some hard times, no pun intended, but they told us we're cutting the cable off because we got to save money on the bills, and we were like in a panic because they told us we're still going to have channels 1, 2 through 20, and 50 through 59, which that was no USA and no TNT. So wrestling was out. Monday Night Wars were out. Dead in the center of the wars. Yeah. Right. And so me and my brother were like scrambling, like, what are we going to do? We started just going to our next door neighbor's house every Monday night at 8:00, and we'd watch it from 8 to 11 o'clock at their house. Made them become wrestling fans because they weren't really fans. But anyways, yeah, we did that, and I just continuously watched, like I said, but basketball, back to the question, basketball like really took over for me. I mean, I was a really good basketball player. Going into my senior year, I was getting a lot of letters for college basketball, and that's where my life was headed. In my head, I was like, I'm going to go. I was never good enough for the NBA. I'm not tall enough, but I was good enough to play overseas, good D1 basketball, if, given the right circumstances. Well, won't get into the specific. Long story short, though, I don't really get to play my senior year of basketball. I get to play like 5 games at a completely different school, and that was it. So fast forward to the end of the summer. Now it's time to go to college. I was still getting college offers, but I decided to go to Western Kentucky University because my stepfather was a star on their basketball team in the 60s. Okay. And when we went to the orientation, he had a meeting with the coach, and the coach said, well, sure, we'll give him a tryout. Okay. Now, I was extremely confident. I never in my life tried out for a basketball team that I didn't make. So I was like, all I need is a shot. I'll make this team. And that's probably honestly where my talent was, like a small D1 school. I wasn't like Kentucky or Louisville good, but I was small D1 good. And I get down to campus, I go down there with my high school buddies, and they're like, yeah, there's no tryout until the end of the year. We've already got our team for this year. So I'm just like, wow, like, wait a minute. So now all I can do is just play pickup ball, work out, and try and stay in shape, thinking I'm going to get a tryout in the spring. Long story short, all that place was frats and partying. That wasn't my scene. And midway through I did my first semester and was like, it's just not for me. And I had other offers, and I had another college that had offered me a scholarship before I went to Western, so I knew I could go there. I had other buddies that I played high school basketball with locally that were at another school in Kentucky. They were like, they do tryouts in the summer. Just come down here, you'll make the team. And I was like, okay. So I had some plans.
Right.
Now, again, mind you, I'm still watching wrestling at this time, but my main focus, because I'm a very goal-oriented person, is like, now I sit out all the spring, and I go do the college tryout. Do my college tryout. It was the worst basketball I've ever played in my life. I mean, I was awful. And I was like, I didn't make this team. I mean, there's no way I made this team. I mean, I just played awful. And I come back home, and I'm like, what do I do now? Like, Western's out. Even this Lindsey Wilson's where it was, Lindsey Wilson College. There's no way I just made this team. Now, I do have a couple other colleges that liked me when I was a senior in high school, but we're talking 2 years later now.
Right.
I could probably get a tryout, but man, I just don't know. So I had already came back home after Western, and I was going to let UPS pay for my U of L, and I didn't like UPS, so I quit. So that was out. So I'm just thinking about, as a young kid, I mean, I'm 19, and I'm thinking, man, how am I going to pay for college? Oh my God, am I about to just not go or whatever, whatever. So anyway, so I come home, and then for 2.5 weeks, I'm just thinking, like, what do I do next? And I literally just one day go, man, OVW's in your backyard. Like, I knew that. You know what I mean? Like I said, I always kept tabs on it. I already knew. Like, I was like, OVW. I used to go to all the OVW shows in middle school and all that. So I was like, OVW's in Louisville, Kentucky, where you live. It's
Right.
10 minutes from your house, the school. So I start researching it. And I'm like, you know, WWE owns it, which I already knew that, but WWE owns it. It's basically the farm leagues. We're talking, this is 2006. All right. And I go, I mean, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, you've always, like, back in my head, I was like, I've always wanted to be a wrestler. Like, when I was a little kid, you know, before basketball, I was like, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. And so I was like, that's what I'm doing. So for 2 weeks, mine was made up. Going to OVW, going to go to pro wrestling. Started watching all the Tough Enoughs again, like, just to get my mind right. I know what I'm preparing for. 2.5 weeks later, letter comes in the mail from Lindsey Wilson.
Oh.
He'd like to offer shit. I was like, shit, you know, like, but at the same time, awesome. Like, you know, I mean, can't complain about a free college scholarship for playing basketball. And that was my
Right.
love. I love basketball, but it was like a weird thing though, because I had been kind of out of the game for like 2 years. You know, I didn't really play my senior year, didn't get to play my freshman year. So I go to Lindsey Wilson and play well, but my mind had already turned to wrestling. And I'm one of those, like I said, I'm one of those dudes that I'm just like, man, when I get a goal, when I get something on my mind, it's just, that's kind of what I'm thinking about at all times. So yeah, I was trying to get back into basketball, get back in basketball shape, but it was kind of a running joke on campus. Like, oh, that's Mitch. He's going to be the wrestler one day. Cause I'd already told everybody. I was like, I'm going to be a wrestler after, you know, like kind of like the overseas and the basketball kind of was out the window. And anyway, long story short, I got ineligible from a math class that you had to get a B in to pass it. I got a C. And I was like, well, that's it. That's my sign. I'm going home, going to OVW, and that's it. Came home at Christmas break, joined a gym, started lifting weights like crazy because I knew like you got to prepare yourself to be a professional wrestler. You don't just show up. These guys were big, especially in 2006. And so I trained for like 6 months. But with the goal, I'm going to OVW. Met people at the gym that were already at the school. Met Serena, you know Serena Deeb?
Yes.
Met Serena at the gym. Met Tony, which we call Santino.
Yeah.
Was in the gym, and he was in the intermediate class at the time. He wasn't signed yet. So we used to all work, like all the wrestlers used to work out at the gym I worked out at. So I just started talking to everybody and like telling them I'm going to start. And they're like, when are you going to start? And I kept saying, man, I want to go in with a look. I want to go in and impress them right off the bat, because I know, see, this business, like I was always smart to the business because I was always a student. You don't have to go in that way, but if you do, you're ahead of the curve. Right. You turn heads immediately, and then they start to go, hey, who's this guy? And that's what this business is. This business is literally who can grab people's attention and hold, and then it's your job to hold their attention. But that's what we're doing, right? And so that was my goal. But then I'll never forget. I got too excited. Like I couldn't wait. I was training my ass off for 6 months in the gym. I gained some size. I left college. I weighed 185 pounds. I gained 10 pounds of muscle, 195 pounds. And I was like, I got to go. Everybody was compliment, like, oh my God, Mitch, you look great. You look big. So I was like, good enough for me. I'm going to OVW. Now, I'm stepping into the land of giants. Okay. These guys are 6'4", 240. But either way, I was ready. Loved it. So I hit up OVW. I talked to Serena, plopped my money down, and did my first beginner's class.
Wow.
That 2000. That was 2007.
2007. Wow.
Yeah, I've been in the game for a long time.
Wow, and I just saw, and we'll get into this here in a few moments when we talk about your first match. I just saw a picture as I was doing my research of who your first match was with, who is actually an alumni of the Final Count here. And so, yeah, that was interesting. I've been going to OVW shows since 2004. And so I was going back then when you were there, and just I guess never realized it at the time.
You got to understand. Back then, it was WWE owned it, right?
Yeah.
So the way
Yeah.
it worked was there was a beginner's class,
Hmm.
there was an intermediate class, which was Rip Rogers' class,
Right.
and then there was Al Snow's advanced slash contract class. A couple of guys that weren't signed were in there. But the main people that were on TV had WWE developmental contracts. Not
Yeah.
everyone, but I'd say 90% of the TV people. Other than that, you were used as a enhancement talent,
Mhm.
or you got to do some backstage segments. I've got a really funny backstage segment story that I got to do, but which I'll tell it. Hell, um, we're at training one day. I'm in training. Al Snow comes out of the back. They're filming Halloween special. Okay, Paul Burchill, like with the gimmick of the backstage segment, Paul Burchill had just got let go by WWE. I don't know if he got fired, but they sent him back to developmental, one of the two, because his pirate gimmick got pulled because of, Disney rights and all that crap, right? So, anyways, Al comes out of the back and says, "We're having training, and you gotta remember, this was the heyday, right? One of the heydays, like because like CM Punk was there, Cody Rhodes was there, all these guys. But I'm not saying like the heyday of like talent, but I'm just saying it was the school was constantly full with guys trying. So I mean, like a beginner's class might have 25 people in it. Rip Rogers class on a Saturday, we would have 100 people in Rip Rogers in the training class. I mean, it was unreal. I mean, he would split us up, 50 here, 50 in the back. And so anyway, Al comes out and says to my trainer, says, "Hey, Tank, send me somebody in the back for a segment." Tank looks around the ring, says, "Anybody want to go?" And young kid, of course, all excited, raises Fang. Do you remember Fang?
Yes. Yeah.
Itty bitty guy, right? Real little. Now, this is before he did the face paint and all that. He was just a young little itty bitty kid.
Right.
And he goes to the back. About 5 minutes later, Al comes back out of the back. He said, "Tank, goddamn it, send me someone back there who looks like they belong in a wrestling locker room." He looked right at me and said, "Mitch, you're up." I didn't want to do it, right? Because I mean, I was just, not that I was shy. I just didn't want to be in a backstage segment that meant nothing. And so, anyways, I go back there. They dressed me up as a pirate on the Halloween thing, and we're in this Halloween party. Paul Burchill comes back and goes, basically gets all over me and says, you're gonna make fun of me. You're gonna make fun of the way I made a living in WWE, took it from me." And then he headbutts me, and I took this amazing bump. And backstage, it was hard floor and chairs, all this crap. I'm trying to impress everybody. I took this bump, I mean, just on the hard cement floor. Al goes, "Cut, perfect. You nailed it, perfect." And then he goes, "Now let's do it again." So we did it 3 times. I had to take that bump 3 times. And then I watched it back on TV. My bump is not even on camera. It's just the headbutt, and I'm out of the shot. But yeah. So anyway, but that's how it was. So you probably didn't know me back then because I didn't really I was in the school, but I wasn't in. I mean, I wasn't having matches there. I was having matches in classes and on the amateur shows, and then going around indies with my trainer, but I wasn't on the actual television back then. But I had been OVW 2007.
That's where I was thinking. Like I was like, because I used to go to some of the amateur shows back then, which I wish they would do nowadays again. But that's another thing because I really feel like that gave the amateur classes, the chance to be out there before getting on TV.
Absolutely.
And for sure. Uh, Now, who were some of your inspirations growing up watching wrestling, or people that you took inspiration from in your wrestling career?
Yeah, good question. I get this all the time. Where'd you get the chosen one from? Right, I get that all the time. How'd the chosen one come up? And it's funny, right? So when you start out, Shawn Michaels was my number one influence, right? That's who I wanted to be like. I thought, but it was weird. Like I told you, I liked Boyhood Dream Shawn, but I liked heel Shawn Michaels. And then once I got into the training and started taking bumps and bumping around, I could really make people look good. I was like, oh man, like being a heel's fun. Like because all you do is bump around and make people look good. and you get to oversell and have fun with it. And so I was like, man, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be this bumping heel that makes everyone look good. Shawn Michaels, Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect type, and whatever, right? But again, we're talking now. I'm in 2007. So, but Shawn was the start of the, like, the brainchild of the chosen one. I was going to be very bumpy heel. Then I was really a big fan of like Randy Orton's Legend Killer. He was doing the Legend Killer at the time. Real cocky, real cocky. And I like that. And then as a heel. And then The Rock had just done the Hollywood Rock deal. And I like that for some reason. The way he was because he went from the people, just everybody loving him to now he's got them in the palm of their hands, booing them. But he was comical though. He was still entertaining. So I was trying to come up with this blend of I'm going to have Shawn's bumping and selling and making guys look at. I want Randy's cocky attitude. And then I want The Rock's promo, which that's hard to do. And no one's going to have The Rock's promo. But yeah, that's what I'm in mold as a 20-year-old when you're trying to come up with your character. That's what I came up with. I'm like, I'm going to throw this all into a ball and I'm going to be a phenomenal heel that makes people look good. And I was already doing matches in class as a heel. And like, that was one of my gifts, right? Is I can wrestle a broomstick or whatever you want to call it, make people look good. I mean, which is what, if you're a really good wrestler, you can do that anyway. I'm not saying I'm like one of one. You know what I mean? But so then, anyways, back to the chosen one and how all that came up. And so obviously The Rock was the great one, right?
Right.
So I'm like, man, I can't be the great one, obviously. And then, but what's really cocky? I'm like, man, everybody in class. So we'll get to this, I'm sure. But like in my class, we had all these divas but it would also bring the guys in, all the the signed gentlemen. Like, so Sean would come to our class, Cody Rhodes would come to our class, all these guys would come to help with the divas. And but they would notice me and they would always come to me. I would get pulled aside. I was the only one. I would get pulled aside quite a bit. Hey kid, you got something. You really got talent. Like, you're really good. Stick with it. You're going to get a contract to WWE in a year or less. And I was going, okay, thank you. And anything else, they slow down a little bit. Like, I remember Sean Spears pulled me aside one time and said, kid, you almost make it look too easy. Like, you gotta almost make it look like you're trying. You can dirty it up a little bit. It's not supposed to look so smooth. And I'd be okay. So anyways, I was getting all these compliments is my point. Mm-hmm. And I went, man, I was born to do this. And if I was born to do this, how can it, as a heel, I be like, say that cockily? And then I was like, I was chosen. This isn't I was chosen to do this. That's how good I am. So that was the concept of it, right? And so I went with it because in my mind, I'm going to be a heel. I'm going to be this great heel. And so I was like, I'm going to be the chosen one. This is before Drew McIntyre, before all, there was no chosen one, but like, I just made it up. And I tried to be a cocky heel. Got the gear made, and but it never came to fruition. And like, because again, I don't know, we'll get to it. In 2007, I trained for about a year. I told you, everyone's telling me I'm going to get a contract to WWE. I was probably really close if I would have stuck with it. But then I found poker. And I mean, we'll get to that, I'm sure. But I'm saying poker again, like I told you, it kind of came my mindset because I was making a lot of money at 21 years old and not beating my body up. And my focus kind of went that way, but I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute. But so yeah, those are my inspirations. So Sean was the cornerstone. Like, Sean to me is the best ever on all around. But if I was trying to mold this perfect character, and at the time I thought Sean, Randy, and The Rock, healed Rock, if I could mold them all together and make them have a baby, that's what the chosen one heel was going to be.
Yeah, I like that. No, I like that answer. I like how you answer that, and I definitely saw, as watching your work in OVW, I definitely saw definitely Shawn Michaels for sure.
Yeah.
The Randy Orton, yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah.
With the athleticism for sure.
Yeah.
I
Appreciate
can
it.
definitely see that. And then The Rock, the showmanship too. You can see that too in you
Yeah.
too for sure. Uh, and then who were you? So I know you were trained by OVW, but initially your first training in OVW, who was that? Who was that trainer in that class?
Yeah. So good question. I get this all the time, especially now that I am also a trainer. But so when I first started, there was a guy named Mo. He wrestled as Mo. He was from Jersey. I think he came from the Monster Factory. He was just an intermediate guy. He was in Rip's class. He was on TV though. Okay, so he had a gimmick where he was on TV. He actually switched gimmicks to because he had like a boxing background. He was going to turned into a boxer. I think he was just a normal wrestling dude before, just a normal wrestler. And he was like, all right, let's go with the boxing, the real life kind of story. He does the boxing gimmick at a house show in like E-Town or something. He tears his ACL. Okay. Well, he's not signed. He was just a waiter because that's kind of what we all did back in the day. We waited tables and went to wrestling school. Did security. A lot of us did security. And excuse me. Just by chance, Tank Tolan had just got fired from WWE. I don't know if you're familiar with Tank.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so Tank became our trainer. So I was about midway through beginners class because again, the way that it worked back then, you did like an 8-week beginners course for like $500, and then they would say, okay, you're good enough to go to Rips for $2,000, or you're not. Pay $500 again to come to beginners. And Mo they'd already given me the blessing to go to Rips, but I don't remember why. But for some reason, it might have just been fate. I mean, I literally don't remember why, but I happened to go back to the beginners, and Tank was now the trainer. Mo was gone, and me and Tank clicked. I mean, he was hungry. He had just got fired. He was kind of trying to reinvent himself at the time. He got a real bad rap. I mean, he just was up on WWE for a year. But really good. I mean, he was a really good, he's a teacher anyways, like now in life. And he's just a very good leader. But again, so going back to this time frame, so WWE back in the day would hire people whether they should be in the business or not. So I tell this story all the time to my students. I walked into training one day, 3 dudes, 6'4", 6'5", 6'4", 240. They looked like they were chiseled out of stone. I mean, jacked, shredded, good-looking dudes. But that wasn't uncommon back then, right? I just assumed that WWE had hired them, and they were there because the way it worked was like we had all the divas. We had Maurice. We had Rosa Mendez in my class. We had Kelly in my class. Alicia Fox was in my class. And the reason we had all these people was because WWE would hire them. They were like bikini models.
Right.
And WWE would hire them and send them to OVW. And Al Snow would go, Tank, I'm going to send them to your class because I don't have time to teach them the basics.
Yeah.
So they had to learn how to bump, run the ropes. I mean, the basics, and so they would all be in our class. I mean, we had all of them, and which was cool because we had a good little mix now. And they were all sweet girls, and all of them had good attitudes. But my point back to these dudes, right? So there are 3 dudes in the ring one day. Like Jack Swagger was in my class one time because they hired him. He didn't really want to be there, you could tell. But anyways, these other 4 dudes, they looked like 3 Randy Orton. I mean, they were 6'4", shredded, good-looking dudes. And they're in the ring, and they're just doing everything we're doing. And it was, like I said, back then it was weird. It was up in the air whether they were already signed or they were dudes that were just coming to start the school because this was the best wrestling school in the country at the time.
Right.
And so I go up to them, I introduce myself, and they're taking some bumps. I'm like, how you guys like it? I'm assuming they were already hired and Al's already sent them to our class and saying, hey, learn the basics, because I'd seen that plenty. And we get there, and I say, "Hey, what do you guys get signed?" And they go, "Not yet." So, oh, you guys are just here, just like me. You just signed up. You just are freaking Greek gods. And they go, "No, uh, WWE flew us in from California.
Wow.
We're just trying it out, and if we like it, they're going to give us a contract." And to me, right, someone who is paying dues, I'm like, what a slap in the face. But eye-opening, because again, that's what this business really is. These dudes look like stars. So yeah, so that's anyways. We'll get into all that like when it comes back to like how I came back and all that. But my point was, so I was on pace. I was on pace to very potentially get a WWE contract. Found poker, went away, but back to Tank. Yeah, Tank was phenomenal. And then also because of the divas and all that, do you remember Seth Skyfire?
Yes, yes.
Seth Skyfire was one of my trainers. So I tell people all the time, we had the best beginners class of all time because it wasn't beginners by any stretch. Tank had just got off the road. He was getting his matches broke down by, I don't know if I was supposed to say his name, but Chris Benoit. Like he was under the learning tree of that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Seth, who's in there, who's in Al's class. So we're getting Al's knowledge passed down to us through Seth. So it literally got to a point with me where I was doing Rip's class. So the schedule back then was we had beginners class on Mondays and Tuesdays. TVs were Wednesdays. Thursdays was all. Friday was like a house show somewhere. Saturdays was a house show somewhere. Sundays were off. But no, Saturdays were not off. Saturdays were Rip's class. Saturday mornings. Saturday morning. So my schedule, I got to the point where I was doing Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays I'd be at TV, Saturday mornings I'd be at Rips. And like I told you though, Rips class, there'd be 100 plus people at this point. And I liked it. I mean, you did learn, but I had this weird epiphany. And whether it's right, wrong, or I was young and stupid all together. I had a buddy who started maybe a month before me. And he, I don't remember if you remember, his actual name was Rich, but his name at OVW was Atlas DeBone.
Yes.
Remember him? Yeah. Good buddies with Rich. We were in class together. And he got signed. Like he had done Rips for like 2 months. And they signed him to WWE. And I get with him. I said, Rich, man, I said, he told me how much they paid, all this stuff. And so I was getting all the inside scoop. But either way, I said, how's Al's class? Was one of my first questions. How's Al? And he goes, first thing Al told me was, forget everything you learned in Rips. And it's not that Rip wasn't teaching you valuable stuff. And Rip will tell you about himself back then. He used to tell us all the time in class, I'm going to teach you how to wrestle, but you ain't going to ever use it. And it was basic because Al was teaching WWE style TV wrestling, and Rip was teaching you how to be a wrestler and teach you how to do not indie wrestling, but house show wrestling, and like how you can go out there and call a match in the ring and all important things to know, by the way. Like they're all work. But my goal was always to be a WWE wrestler. Told you that was I didn't even know WCW existed. I mean, WWE was my goal from day one. And I didn't see it through the first go around, and I found poker. And but Tank and Seth are that's who. Mo was my original. He taught me how to bump. He taught me how to run the ropes. But Tank and Seth, a little bit of Rip, but more. I consider myself a Tank and Seth guy.
Tank and Seth, yeah, they both great guys. Especially Tank, both great to work to learn under. I'm definitely sure about that. Tank had that. He had that hard hitting, and he knew how to teach people. You could tell that about his wrestling. And so I definitely like that you were trained by Tank and Seth and Rip too as well.
Yeah, I got a Rip.
So your first match, everyone's first match is usually an interesting story. So your first match, I found out it was against, because I looked at senior pictures that you had posted on social media, and this was against an alumni of the show, recent alumni of the show, Von Lilas.
That's right.
What was that first match like?
Well, again, so this was an amateur show. Okay. So the way it worked back then was if you sold 5 tickets to the amateur show, like $10 a piece, you got a spot on the show. And usually it was a battle royal. Maybe you got in a tag. You didn't get like a singles match or whatever. It was just kind of a very carny type show, but it was practice in front of a live crowd. And these crowds, because again, 100-something people in rips, and the people, doing these amateur shows outselling tickets, if 30 of them sell 5 or 50 of them sell 5, you got a packed house. And we did. I mean, my first match was in front of like 400 or 500 people. And so I'm having these matches. And so that goes back to what we were just talking about. In Tank and Seth's class, they would let us have matches. Now, totally different. We're having psychology. We're having like WWE style matches. Rips training back in the day, again, 100 people, no bullshit. I mean, that's like, we would get there. We would do squats. We would do, we'd warm up. We do all the stuff we're supposed to do. And he would split us up. He would just count us down. 50 of you all go to the back. 50 of you stay out in the front of the house. And he would put someone in charge of the back of the room, and that we do promos in the back for an hour. Okay. Like just taking turns. Right. So do a minute promo, 50 minutes, right? So there's 50 minutes. The other 50, we would pair off 25 groups of 2, and we would chain wrestle for an hour. So, and I mean, you know what chain wrestling is?
Yeah.
Like literally, you just holds, lock up, you just move, you fill it out, and you do learn a lot. Like, don't get me wrong. But after you had done it for a month, it feels like, God dang, I mean, this is getting crazy. But that's what we would do. And then you would switch, and then you all come together. So now we're 2 hours in class. Hour 3, he would let some guys that he trusted do some matches, but he would literally just like call it in the ring. Mm-hmm. And again, there's a skill in that, and that's important to know for certain situations. But for where I want it to be, which was WWE, I knew I needed that. Don't get me wrong, but you didn't need it as much because, again, going back to what Rich tells me, day one, Al Snow tells him, you forget everything you learned in Rip's class. Right. So I go, damn, I still would go, but I started really finding I would go back to Tank and Seth's class a lot more than Rip's. Start missing Rip's. I'd go every other week, but I would never miss Tank and Seth's. So we would do the amateur show once a month. And I was just, my gear, I'd ordered gear. It was this is a normal wrestler story. It was supposed to be in a month. We're 2 months in, still hasn't came in. Ladies like, oh, it's coming. So finally, I don't know why. I just remember being like, I'm one of those people that's like, I'm very confident, like once I get in the moment, but before the moment, nerves, right? I get nervous. I'm like, man, like you're not ready yet. Cause I'm a perfectionist. I'm like, man, you're not ready yet. You could be better. But truth is, in anything, you're never really truly ready. You gotta go out and do it to get the experience to keep doing it and get better at it. Right. I could kill it in class all day long, but can you do it in front of 500 people? We'll see. That's a different ball game. So we go and it's amateur, and I'm really debating. I'm like, man, should I do it? Should I not do it? I'm like, no, you're not gonna do it. You don't even have gear. Your gear's not even in. Finally, I just talked myself into do it. I don't know why. I don't remember why. My uncle from Vegas was in town. My grandma, my Nana, she was so I could easily sell the tickets to my family that wanted to come. So I just said, hell with it. I'm just going to take a leap of faith. Going to do it. I put the 5, I get my 5 tickets sold easily, show up to the arena. And it was a 6-man tag is what it was.
Okay.
Me, Lucky Electro, which is a guy named Leo, which I've got a whole another story about that guy. If I ever write a book one day, I won't now, but back in the day, I used to always say, if I ever wrote a book, he would be one of my chapters. He hurt me real bad in training one day for no reason. He didn't mean to. He's just about as athletic as a flea. and Scott Cardinal
Yes.
versus Von Lilas. I remember, I can picture the other two, but they were just two other guys in the intermediate. And but I got to get in there. I got to shine up a little bit on the babyface side, and I got to take the heat in the match. But again, I want to be a heel, right? But I'm baby facing it up. But it's funny you say that. So it's not. I mean, it wasn't just my first match, right? That was my first match in front of a live audience. Was that?
Right.
But that was a Thursday. Friday, me, Tank, Atlas, which Rich, and Romeo Roselli. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Romeo Roselli. We all get in the car because Tank gets me and Rich booked on an indie show. We all get in the car. So my first match is on a Thursday night in front of the OVW amateurs. Nervous as hell, but it went fine. The crowd was super hot. Friday, I'm in a car driving to somewhere in Tennessee. I get to this show. It's me versus Rich, opening match. And we just go out and do what we do in training. What I do. First night, I'm a baby, he's a heel. I remember that. And I remember, but you remember, Rich looked like a star. So he walked out, and the crowd is just cheering him. And I come out, it's supposed to be the baby. They're kind of looking at me like, what is this guy? And again, I don't have my tights, by the way. I'm wearing, Seth got me some turquoise undies, basically. You saw them in the picture if you researched it. Those were not my intended tights, but I just said hell with it. I'm wearing them. We have a match. There was one, we thought there was a blunder in the match. It wasn't, but it would look, we to what we planned, there was a blunder. But we went back and watched the thing. You couldn't even tell. But Dr. Tom was there. Dr. Tom pulls us aside. He goes, guys, how long you been working? Rich was like, oh, I started training in August. And I looked at him. I said, this is my second match. My first match was last night in OVW. I was like, this is literally my first match. This is my second match. He looked at me and goes, are you kidding me? And I said, no. And Rich too. He goes, you guys are great for being green. Because you all are green, but you all are great. And I did this like drop kick backflip thing that Seth had taught me. So he was like, he put over the fact that, yeah, you did a backflip drop kick, but you made it mean something. Like you didn't do it just to do it. And, but it felt a little weird. And the next night we come back, we do another show on Saturday. So now I've got 3 straight matches from 0 to 3 in a weekend and get out there. But I go to the promoter, and it's so funny because I don't know what gave me the balls or whatever. I just wanted to be a heel so bad at this point in my life. And I go to the promoter and I just say, hey, can I work heel tonight versus Rich? And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I don't give a shit. Go ahead. Like we literally go out, me and him, opening match again, same building, same crowd, but now I'm a heel. He's a baby. But it went a lot better the second night in my mind because I got to be a heel. But both matches were fine. I mean, for what they were at the time. So those are my first 3. I don't have a whole lot of recollection of my match at the amateur show as far as like, I just remember I took the heat, and like I said, like back then I could work a lot better than they were allowing us to work. And those shows were very basic. And then we turned around the next night. Me and Rich got to call some stuff and have some fun. And like I said, Dr. Tom put us over. So it was cool, but it was, that was my first. I went from 0 to 3 matches in a row, and all that show was stacked. I mean, like, what's Eric Young was on that show. Tank, Romeo, a lot of former WWE, future TNA guys were on that show. I didn't realize it at the time, but yeah, it was a stacked show. So
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Like that first match that you had, like that it was, like I said, everyone's first match is a very interesting match, and yours no doubt was, especially because of the fact that you didn't have your gear yet. So
I didn't get
to have
4 months later, by the way.
Wow.
But it did look good when I got it. I'll give her credit. She did kill it. It did look good. It was the gear that I originally ended up wrestling in my comeback.
Really?
The black tights. Yeah.
I love those tights. Those tights are awesome.
Yeah.
No, but like it. I love how you straight out the next night you had your second match and then your third, and like wow, what a rocket.
Yeah.
while we're talking about matches, if you could pick 3 matches that you have had in your wrestling career as your top favorites, I know this is gonna be a hard one. What matches would you pick?
Oh yeah. Mm. I know my number one. I think maybe my number, just to put it in there, was just because of what it meant. Like, so again, that all happened in like October, about that little run that I told you just now, that little 3 match run. And then I didn't wrestle again until January. Again, back to perfectionist. Tights aren't ready. I don't want to go do 6-mans on the amateur show. I want to do matches, you know. But January, I've shared this story on Facebook before. Tank, I'm on my way into a waiting table shift at Old Chicago. I used to wait tables at Old Chicago. It's like a Saturday night. And Tank calls me, and I am literally pulling in the parking lot of my job. And he goes, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "You want to work?" I got Seth. I was supposed to wrestle Seth up in Indiana, but he had to pull out. And I said, "Hell yeah, I want to work." He said, "You're going to work me." And I was like, "I'm in." And I literally said, "I'll be there." Went to his. I said, he said, "Come to my apartment about 5:30. It was 5 o'clock. He said, "We got to hit the road. We got to get up there." I said, "Awesome." I literally from the parking lot called my manager and said, "Can't come in tonight. I'm going to go wrestle." And he goes, what did he say? He goes, so anyways, we get up there, and it was cool to wrestle my trainer, who had become a really good friend at the time, but it was also a learning experience for me because he was dating Jillian Hall at the time.
Yeah.
She was still signed to WWE. So I'm in the car ride with them. We're riding up. We're just talking. I'm learning because that's the old way of the business. You know, you learn in the car, but we're also friends. You know, we're like at this point, and I'm just grateful, and I'm excited. I'm get to wrestle Tank, so I'm not nervous because I know who I'm working. I know it's going to be fun and good. New promotion I've never worked for. It was called HPW.
Future
And
Pro, yep.
Yep. And we get up there, packed house. I mean, really packed. So I'm excited. Again, I hadn't wrestled since October, so I'm starting to get it. You know, this is gonna be fun again. I'd wrestled in class, but not in front of live audiences. And we get up there. Me and Tank put together a really good match. And I'll never forget. Intermission goes off, and Jillian does an autograph signing at intermission.
Yeah.
She had been out there and she watched a match or two after her signing. She comes back to the back. She looks at Tank and she goes, "Tank, these guys, this crowd needs to get entertained." And he looked at me. He goes, "Change your plans." Okay, sorry. So yeah. So she looks at us and says, "This crowd wants to be entertained." And he, without missing a beat, looks at me and goes, "Change your plans." And I'm not nervous because I'm with him, but I'm just like, we're about 10 minutes out from our match, and we had already gone over this match about for an hour. I'd already had it all in my head. He goes, "Instead of doing this, we're going to do this." He put all these like fun, entertaining comedy spots, but not just comedy spots that were like haha and like, you know, kind of a little corny. He did it like I know this now. I didn't know what he was doing then, but he was also staying true to his new character that he was doing. And he was in this phase where he was getting out of the dicks, and he was doing Ring of Honor, and he was trying to be like this fitness. He was doing some fitness gimmick up at Ring of Honor. He was jacked and shredded and all that. So anyway, but he added all these spots kind of really quickly and on the fly where I was like, and we go out there again. I'd never worked in front of these people. He had been there before, and that match was just so fun. I didn't have to worry. I knew he had my back. He was like, he made me, and then he beat me. Like he didn't just eat me up. Like he let me shine in my own heelish way. Because again, back then I wanted to be a heel, so he was letting me do what I wanted to do. And it was a lot of fun and pride and working your trainer.
Right.
We had worked in class once or twice, but actually in front of a crowd, because I just admired him so much. So it was fun to work him and then learn what I learned. I did not know at the time what I was learning. Now, 15 years later in the business, I'm like, oh my God, he was so smart to change the match, how quick he did, and the things he called. And again, how smart Jillian was just to turn around and say to us, hey, give them something else. They need something else. Like, and that's pros, right? You got two former people on the fly going, okay, it's time to give them something different. So that's in my top three. That might be my three. Oh man. Number two. Let me think about myself. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I do got one. I did a match at the arena. And this, by no stretch of the imagination, wow, crap. Now I'm gonna give you four because I've got a new offer completely. Okay, all right, but either way, this one's in there. This one's in my top three ish for sure. I had a guy, so I was when I came back, I became I'm sure we'll get to it. I became the trainer at the arena. Okay, and we had a guy come in his 40s, late 40s, mid to late 40s. Completely out of shape, real bad. I mean, couldn't stand on one foot, and just not athletic. And I'm watching him, and he's just beating himself up, taking bumps, hitting the ropes. And his name was Mike. And I said, Mike, man, what are you doing, man? What are you here for? Like, is this like just a dream? Like, you just want to have do that? Because I know you're too old to really pursue it. Because I keep it real. I always keep it real with my students. And he goes, no, honestly, he goes, I'm here for my brother. He goes, my brother wanted to be a professional wrestler so bad, and he tragically took his own life. And I said, oh my God, I had no clue. And he had been showing up for a long time. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, my goal is to have a match on his 1 year anniversary of when that happened. And I was like, I got you. I got you. And he goes, thanks. So I know I have a year with him, and it was going to take that time. I mean, he was not an athlete or in shape. He's in his 40s. This was not his aspirations. But I get him on a diet. I get him in the gym. He is dedicated. He really was. I give him all the credit in the world. He kept showing up, and he started getting good enough to where I go, we got it. And I knew the whole time, you're wrestling me because I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make the match good. I'm going to do it for you because you're putting in all the work. But I know how, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about match with a broomstick, yada, yada, yada. I know how to get good matches out of almost anybody. And anyway, I had trained him up enough to where I knew his strengths, I knew his weaknesses, where I knew I could get a good match, and I mean a good one, like 15 plus out of him. Going back to what you were just asking me, he had never had a match in front of a live audience, right? We're doing it in practice. So he's nervous as can be, and what it means to him, right? And so to me, it was kind of, at first, it was like, this is just another day at the office. It's just what I do. I'm going to go out and do my thing. I'm going to kill it. But it got really real right before we went through the curtains. So we're standing backstage. He's nervous as can be. This is just a private show for his friends and family. And it was about 200, 150 people there at the arena. But it wasn't like a wrestling show per se. It was a show for this match. We did put on a couple other matches for him, but so they get in the ring before the match, and Tony honors his brother. They do the 10 bell salute, and they talk about how hard Mike's been working for a year. And they talk about, this was his goal. He's here to do this day. He's been training over a year for this specific day. And, of course, I can't imagine that tragedy in a family, but it brings up all kinds of emotions. As the 10 bell salutes, they start playing a really sad song. And I'm backstage, and I'm doing what I normally do. I'm a gorilla, stretching, getting my hair wet. I'm, just getting loose, and I'm just I'll look over at Mike, just say, I got you, we're good. And he's bawling hysterically, bawling. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Because again, not only do I know what it means to him, I also know what it's like to have your first wrestling match. So you're already nervous.
Yeah.
Nervous of your actual performance, and now you're nervous of what this actually means to your friends and family. I mean, it was a whole cluster of emotions. And then I got nervous because I'm like, now I have to 100% dial him in. And I know I'm going to be there for everything I need to be there for, but I have to make sure he's there because it's about him. I'm about to make him look like $1 million in front of his friends and family. And at this point, I was pretty hot on the scene back at OVW and whatever. So I already had a name too, to where he's wrestling somebody around these parts. And so I got that going. So I don't care that it wasn't a perfect match as far as, ABCs, but I have pride in what I do. So I really wanted to shine him up. And we go out there, lock up, and he's just nervous, and I just grab him and I was like, I got you. Just slow down and listen. He did. Match went off exactly like we had it planned, and the place went crazy. And he beats me, all that crap. And he comes to me afterwards crying, and he goes, "You've got to come out to this bar afterwards and let me buy you a drink because whatever." Because of course. So I go out, and his whole family's there, and at night they all come up to me individually, hug me, thank me. This was our son's dream. This was my cousin's dream. This is my best friend's dream. Not Mike's, the one that, tragically died. And he got to live this for his brother. And now we've got this for our family for the rest of our lives. And they do. They've got all on camera. They recorded the whole show. And so that was a cool one. Because it was bigger than wrestling. You know what I mean? It was like a wrestling match where I got to do what I do, but it was way bigger than a storyline but that's what's cool about wrestling. You can do some cool shit with it, and it brings some people together, and that was a big one. And then my number one, oh man, now we got a tie. Number 1 and 2 are a tie. That's because this new one just happened recently. The Gaslight.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if you have that on the question list, but
yeah.
Okay, we'll get to it, but that's on the list now.
Yeah.
And the main reason it's on the list is I became a father, and in the past, my daughter's about to turn 5, so 5 years, and she discovered that I was a wrestler when she was 3.5. My wife, I think, showed her on YouTube one day or something, and she was obsessed with me on YouTube, right? And we watched my matches 100 times. She could get the which is my number 1 performance match is coming up, but there's a match versus me versus Rocco Bellagio. It's on YouTube. And she would want it over and over. Do the match with the bad guy with the sign, Daddy, and all the time. And anyway, so she begged me, right? And then I've been training back at the arena, and I would tell her on my training nights, I'm going over to wrestling, and she's like, "You're wrestling?" She'd get so excited, and I'd say, "Well, Daddy's just teaching. I'm not really wrestling." Well, when you do, this is what she would tell me. If you do, you would take me, right? And I said, well, I won't wrestle without you being there again, right? So that became a thing where she really started wanting to see her daddy wrestle. So I started thinking, man, I'm not getting any younger. I got to do it. She's starting to get to the age where she can appreciate it and she'll remember it, because like I said, I don't know how many I got left. I'm not done. I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but obviously, as I just had a match this past summer, but yeah, so just the way that all happened. It was we'll get maybe the backstory of it later, but the reasoning it's one of my top matches is because my daughter got to see me wrestle, and it was not at all what I had planned for her to see my first match. We'll get to the story later, but it was absolutely perfect. When I saw the video of her cheering me on after I won the match and how like excited she was for me. I mean, there's as a father, there's just no better feeling than that. So that's my new. I forgot because it's so brand new. That's in my top. But then my number one that I'm most proud of performance wise is probably the match of the year 2016. Me and Rocco, I was just that's probably my peak where I was fired on all cylinders psychology wise. I was putting together matches like I had good string of matches to where I was putting them together. Like there was a fatal 4-way like a month or two before that, right? I basically put that whole match together. Wow. Rocco helped a little bit, but it was I'd say I was about 70%. Rocco was about 25%. Tyler Matrix, who was a green kid at the time, we just said, you be here, you do this. And Daniel Eads was good too, but Daniel, he would come from out of town. So he would get to the arena with not much time. So we kind of would put matches together before he even got there and then just say, hey, this is what we need from you. What can you do in this certain scenario? What would you like to do? And he would say, oh, I'll do this. And we'd say, okay, cool. But as far as like the blueprint of the match and like the psychology of the match, we would lay all that stuff out a little bit before. But I felt like for about 4 or 5 months leading up to that match, I was just on fire wrestling wise. My matches were just flowing. Everything was good. And then we get to the match of the year. And there's a funny story behind that because that honestly might not be it got voted match of the year. That might not be the best match me and Rocco have ever had. We had a dark match. So this might actually, as crazy as it sounds, I keep going back to my top 3, but there was a dark match. Okay. So I don't know. So there's an unwritten rule in wrestling, right? When you get to TV, there's a call sheet. You look and see what you're doing. Oh, okay. I'm on match 2, 8 minutes with so-and-so. This is the business. Okay, cool. You prepare. Or, oh, I just got a backstage segment tonight. Don't got to work. Ain't got to change out of my workout clothes or whatever. Well, we get to the match and I had a promo or something. But then at the bottom, there's dark matches. And for the fans that don't know, dark matches are matches that happen after the TV just for the live audience. And it says Mitch versus Rocco. And we had never touched. Now, at this point in time, me, Rocco, Devin Driscoll, and Robbie Walker were all sharing a locker room backstage. So we were all close, but we had never touched, me and Rocco. We had never had, storylines that crossed. But we were really getting along backstage. And those are usually, starts of good matches. Just having that trust. And I'll never forget it. I looked at the board and I was kind of, I got to wrestle a dark match, because you don't really want to, but I mean, right. So I start thinking, man, okay. And Rocco comes up to me, goes, Mitchy baby, as we always go, Mitchy baby. He goes, what do you want to do tonight? And I looked at him without hesitation. I said, nothing. And he starts laughing. He goes, I hear you. This is before the show. Comes back about 20 minutes later, Mitchy baby, what do you want to do tonight? And I was like, I don't know, Rock, just go out there and bullshit and have some fun. It's okay. Get with me. About midway through the show, we're backstage. We start coming up with some ideas. What if you do this? Okay, I do this. What if you counter and do this? Okay, we just start throwing out these ideas. Well, next thing you know, we're having a pay-per-view WrestleMania style match. We go out there and absolutely have one of the best matches I've ever had in my life in front of probably half the audience because, half of the people leave. Dark. But it was like magic. And I'm talking just the timing, everything about the match was perfection. We walked to the back together, never touched. So we walked to the back and we just go, holy shit, did you feel that? And he was like, yeah, that's phenomenal. We walk right to the production guy. He goes, can we get a copy of that match? Guy goes, oh, sorry, we weren't taping it. Because sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If you ask, they 100% will. So there's no video of this match ever, but it was phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal match. And so good that we got to TV the next week. And right on paper, it says Rocco versus Mitch. 10 minutes, and then we 12, whatever, 10 to 12. And we go to the producer and we said, what do you want? And they go, we want basically what you did in the dark match last week. Like, it was that good. It was that good. But, and then we didn't give them that. We couldn't copy it. So it was a happy accident. But it was just as funny, you know, you go from, oh, I don't want to do shit, it's a dark match, to having a classic. So that's honorable mention. I don't know if it's in my top.
Yeah. No, I love how you came up with those matches, and you knew which one you wanted, and then you even added some. I love that. I just have to say,
Well, I forget some.
I love the sentimental value of the story you told about the match with the guy that with the tragedy of his brother passing. I love that story, and then the story of your daughter being able to see you perform in the ring for the first time. That definitely had to be an awesome experience as well. I know going and watching the video of it, I was like, well, first of all, I was upset that I missed seeing you return. So that was a little bit of it too. I was like, but then I was like, oh, it's so cool that he got to wrestle in front of his daughter. That was so cool too. So definitely cool matches right there. How did you decide to name your super kick finisher Athlete's Foot?
Again, okay, this goes back to 2007. I'm trying to come up with a finishing move, right? As every wrestler should. And rule A, you got to get something that you can do to everybody. Okay, that's the number one thing you should be thinking. And I didn't want to do the super kick. Okay, I wanted again. I already knew my tights were going to be very Shawn Michaels based. At the time I was growing my hair out. I ended up cutting it back then, but at the time I was growing my hair out, so I was like, I'm gonna have long hair, gonna have the Shawn Michaels kind of tights, gonna be working a similar style to him. I don't need to just rip off his super kick too. You know, that's what I'm thinking. So, but again, loved Randy Orton, loved the RKO. So I was trying to develop this move. It was like a running hook reverse, like I would flip my whole body, invert it, and do like a reverse DDT. Like that's what I was trying to get, but I could never master it. Started messing around with this neck breaker thing, but I had, because I'm such a Shawn fan, of course, I had mimicked the super kick a million times, and I was good at it. So I would just do it, and I started going, but I can't. This can't be my finish. This can't be my finish. But I'm going to use it. You know, I'm like, I got to, I have to Markish in me or whatever. But, and again, going back to my gimmick at the time was you're chosen for this. I was really athletic, you know, so I was like, what can I name this that's kind of goes with that term? And that's what I went with. I was like, oh, I'm an athlete. So the athlete's foot. But it was supposed to be a falsy type move. Like it was supposed to be like a really nice move that I had, but it wasn't going to be my finish.
Right.
And, actually, when I came back to the Indies in like 2015, I wasn't doing the super kick. I was doing this basically a reverse RKO where it was a jumping. I was doing the RKO, but in a neck breaker form. And I loved it. I mean, coming up with ideas of how to get into it was awesome. Again, working heel at the time. But I come back to OVW, and the first match I have was with Eddie Diamond for the OVW heavyweight title. First match back after years away. And I use the super kick as a falsie. And I nailed him so freaking good that the boys in the back, the announcers, everybody thought that I was winning. They were like, oh my God, that's it. And he kicked out and he beat me. But when I got back to the back, people were like, holy shit, I thought you were winning. That super kick was insane. Like, and next thing you know, so again, this is the way wrestling works. Snowball effect. I come in next week, and literally I was doing a run-in spot as a babyface where I was supposed to mow down some heels. The heels were jumping another babyface, Eddie, I think. I'm supposed to save him now. And they looked at me and said, you mow everyone down with the super kick. You mow them down. Just it looked so freaking good. It got such a good reaction when I did it in the match that now it's my move. And I was like, okay. And just boom, boom, boom. And then I got into a tag team with Adam Wild where he kind of did, they kind of tried to make us like the Rockers, like where, doing super kicks. That became part of the story. And then that was it. I mean, but it was never actually supposed to be my move. Funny story, though, about the actual name of it. Gilbert Corsi, he used to really love that I played poker for a living on the side. He thought that was the coolest thing ever. He used to always be like, man, don't you want to incorporate your poker career into your wrestling? And I'd be like, Gilbert, I don't see how it matches. It's two different worlds. And, and I was a wrestler before poker. And, anyways, he goes, well, your finishing move, don't you like the super kick? Don't you want to name it something like jackpot or all in? He wanted it to be poker related. Yeah. Cashing in or whatever. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. But he goes, and again, this is wrestling IQ for some people. You have to sometimes smarten announcers up things you want, right? Like, I want you to talk about this in my match. I want you to talk about this. I want you this. This is called this. Call this move that, because they educate the crowd. Mm-hmm. And once it becomes a thing, that's how it gets over. And God bless Ron Head. You remember Ron Head? Ron Head was he's probably my favorite announcer. Him and Sharon. He came to me one day and he goes, what do you call your super kick? And I said, I call it the athlete's foot. And he looked at me, he goes, I love it. And I go out that night, I do a match, I hit the move, and Ron Head just starts going, athlete's foot. Yeah, like Jim Ross, athlete's foot. Mitch Huff hit the athlete's foot. That's over. And he put it over like $1 million. And that's it. Once he does it, that's the name of the move. And the next week, I'll never forget, Gilbert's commentating one of my matches. And he's sitting out there and he's like, Huff with the athlete's foot. I mean, he's putting it over just like he's supposed to as an announcer. Yeah. But in my head, I'm like, he hated the name athlete's foot. He wanted something poker related. But yeah, I came up with it because I was athletic and I thought it fit. And again, you got to remember, heel. Like I was thinking, I'm going to give him the athlete's foot. That's heelish. All my stuff was heel based. I mean, that was my intention. So it's weird that it all got over so well as a baby face.
Yeah, no, I love it. I do. Like you said, it's a heel type thing because it's like, I'm going to give this person athlete's foot. It's like, who wants to have athlete's foot?
Yeah.
Now, how did your second time in OVW come to be?
So I came back. It's a long story short. Yeah, like I said, poker was it was still good, but it was slowing down. I was in a relationship at the time where my girlfriend was like really asking me, like, you're so much more than poker. Like you're so much more talented than poker. And like in life, like, what do you want to do? And it's weird. I'm just like, I'm not a 9-to-5 dude. Right. Like people think like, oh, you got the charisma to go out and be successful in the sales world and the business world. But I don't enjoy that stuff. But it was funny. So this big, long talk / argument, whatever, we were talking and she it turned my brain on to go, yeah, I should go back to wrestling. Cause I always had the what ifs, right? Because again, very close to a WWE contract. That always weighs on your mind. As someone who when you get close to something, you go, man, what if I didn't stop in 2007? Would I have got signed? Wouldn't I be signed? Where would I be now? Again, not that life was bad by any stretch at that point, but I was like, man, who knows what I would be doing? I might have been on WrestleMania. So, I mean, who knows? Mm-hmm. And so I started going, man, maybe I should get back into it. And this was 2014. So we're talking 7 years later. And that's what I'm going to do. My mind just switched. I still played poker for income, but it was like, I wasn't out like traveling as much, chasing WSOP bracelets and all that crap. I was literally playing poker to pay my bills. And then was working out like a madman again. And hold on 1 second. I'm gonna put you on my yeah. Oh, stay with me. I gotta get my phone charger. So yeah, so I mean, I started working out like a madman. Because again, at this point, I'd gotten bigger. I was like 215, 220. When I was wrestling at OVW, I quit. I was like 205. So I put in size. You know, I was a kid. I was 20 years old when I left. And 21 actually. And people already started asking, like, hey, you look like a wrestler. And there was one thing, I know this is silly, but I went to one of my best friend's kid's birthday party, and they had a character there. You know, a guy that does a character where you sit down, they don't know you, they don't know nothing about you, and they just draw your character. Right. And I sat down just like everybody else at that party, and out of everything he picked a professional wrestler as the character to draw me. And I went, there's something, like in my head, I was like, man, is this a sign? Like, there's something there. Like, people kind of think it anyways. I really used to do it. I mean, I never told them. I told people back in the day, but I didn't used to go around displaying it. Like, I wasn't one of those people. And, well, hell, I'm just going to go for it. And was training. I had my eyes on OVW, but I never, really paid attention at, when TNA owned them. Because I was never a TNA, so I never really considered going there when they were the developmental for TNA. And now we're talking 2014. They're not the developmental for anybody, but they're still thriving. They're surviving. Little engine. And anyways, I'm working out. I've got these plans in my head. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go somewhere. And I'm watching wrestling pay-per-view with some buddies. And one of the guys goes, I know a guy that promotes wrestling in Jeffersonville, in New Albany. And I said, who's that? He goes, Rick Brady. I said, really? He goes, yeah, if you're serious about getting back in, he goes, I'm sure he can give you a shot. And granted, the indie scene it was starting to get hot, but I mean, that was all foreign to me. Yeah. I'm a WWE developmental school kid. I never went out and traveled with the indies besides the couple little shots I did with Tank. I was just like, okay, that's what it's got to be. But my goal was get back in, get in front of the right people, and get to WWE. It's always been my goal. And remember, AEW didn't exist back then, and that was basically it. Impact, but yeah. So anyway, I just training like a madman, and finally get in touch with Rick Brady. He says we do a wrestling school on whatever day. I don't remember what day it was, but it's over in New Albany at this production house. Show up. I do. First I go watch one of their shows. So they have a show at the production house. Well, they draw a couple hundred people.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh shit. I mean, this ain't, I mean, it's indies, but it's not nothing. It's just cool. But I'm looking at all the guys in the ring and girls in the ring, and I'm like, some of them you're like, okay. Some of them you're like, really? You're trying to be a pro wrestler? It's the indies. And but I was just in the crowd in a t-shirt and whatever, and people kept looking at me. Like, again, I'm standing out because I'm in good shape at this point. So I said, all right. Rick says, come to training. I go to training. One other kid, two kids there. Two kids and Apollo. You know who Apollo is?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Apollo's a trainer there. And we have to set up the ring. We set up the ring. I mean, back to square one. Setting up the ring, doing it all. I get in the ring. I've not done anything in 7 years. And I take a bump, and I'm like, oh, that felt pretty good. I rolled around. I said, oh, yeah, I still got it. Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if it was still there. I was just kind of testing myself. And it was one of those things. And literally, I took one bump, ran the ropes, and did two rolls. And Apollo looked right at Rick and went, like use him. Like, and they already knew my background. Like they knew I wasn't like brand new. And I just slowly started getting in the ring, training. I started showing up there every week, to the point where Apollo got busy, I think. And they asked me to start running the training over there. And so at the point where, again, anyway, long story short, so 2000, yeah, that was 2014, I believe. And it was time to come back. And I get back in, get to be my heel self. I got my tights finally. My tights finally came in. Got my tights, and we get in there, and they pushed me to the moon. But a really funny story is I have a meeting with Rick before, and he goes, Mitch, he goes, you're bigger than like our whole roster. Like I got this idea, like you're the chosen one, right? But you went away for 7 years. You've been in the mountains. You've been like training like a beast, and like you're gonna come back and you're just gonna kill, like you're gonna kill her, like this is right when Brock was doing Suplex City. He wanted me to be, he's like, you could be like our Brock Lesnar. You could just suplex everybody and just because you look better than everybody, you're in shape. And I looked at him and I said, Rick, I said, that's not how I work. And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, dude, I like to make people look good. He goes, yeah, which most guys would say, hey man, that's the golden ticket. You get to suplex people, you get to eat everybody up, look like $1 million. But I was smart enough to know, like, if I get to WWE, I'm not Brock Lesnar. You know what I mean? I'm not really going to be Brock Lesnar where it counts. So why even pretend to be him on the indies? And I just came back in and started, and I got hot real quick to where then I got really close with Too Tough Tony, and Tony started taking me on the road with him, and it was weird. There was a little transition where I was going up to Illinois, and I was babyface, and I was heel here. But I started noticing there was a change where I was like, man, the babyface stuff is really, it's working. I mean, they love me. And I'd come back to New Albany. I was trying to be a heel. They would cheer me. I'm like, man, there's something here. There really is something here. And before long, OVW starts calling. OVW and me and Tony go have a meeting with Danny Davis. Make a deal with Danny. We want you all to come in for TVs and SNSs only. And we were supposed to actually you're supposed to sell tickets, but we were going to get a little piece of the ticket sales. Like, because they didn't pay guys back then. But that was kind of like a please come work for us type of thing.
Right.
Anyways, I went back, and like I said, my first match back, I wrestled they put me on for the heavyweight title. First match back against Eddie Diamond. And, but that's how it happened. I mean, I just kind of eased back in on the local indie circuit. Got hot real quick. Got to do some cool stuff with Tracy Smothers, and it was a cool time because I was more mature. I was more aware. I had more of a, when I was 20, I was good, but I was young. Now I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly what goal. I got a better look. And I was turning heads to the point where promoters were putting me in the ring with, every time they bring in a big name, like I would wrestle Sabu. I'd wrestle Shane Douglas. All these guys that I watched growing up, and it was cool because. But the thing is, what people don't realize is, you gotta have talent. You gotta have some kind of drawing power about you to where the promoter looks at you and goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna pay X amount of dollars to bring Shane Douglas in, but he's going against my best guy."
Yeah.
And so I kept repeatedly getting put in those positions. So I knew I was on the right track. And again, my mindset though was still WWE. And then when OVW came calling, right? And this is kind of a sad story, but I went back to OVW thinking this was the OVW that's my home. This is where I cut my teeth. And I showed up for my match against Eddie Diamond expecting. I mean, you remember how it was in 2007. 400, 500 people standing only. You had lines waiting outside to get TV. Well, there might have been 75 people the night me and Eddie wrestled. And I remember, I'm like, what happened here? And not that the guys weren't good and working hard and being, but it just was different.
It was.
And it went through a lot of iterations. Like Chris Silvio took over the book, and Revolver, Trailer Park Trash. He was there for a little bit. He left, and then like I said, Silvio came in. So it was we built it back up, man. I mean, like I said, when I first got there were 75 people in the crowd. And then fast forward to 2016, so 2 years later, where me and Rocco are having our match, and it's 350, 400 in the crowd. So, we put in a lot of work as a group, and commend those guys because it was different, because I was used to WWE, but it was a blessing and a curse for me, honestly, and more my own fault than not their fault. I went back to OVW thinking, this is practice. This is my NXT before I go to NXT because my goal. And but you just, when you're someone like me, perfectionist, like I was telling you, like you fall, you love it. So you get so invested in what you're doing. Every storyline you're in, you want to make it the best you can make it. And sometimes it ain't, you just got to go with it. You got to make it the best you can. And you would want to do something and they would say no, or you would say, oh man, I want this match I want to go 15 tonight and tear the house down. And then you'd get to TV and they'd go, okay, you got 6 minutes. Shit, man. But that's how real pro wrestling is. It's not always what you want it to be. But I got comfortable. That was my problem. I was traveling and I was grinding my ass off for about 2 years, really making some names. X-Pac was tweeting about me. I was making connections. Rhino was telling me, you send WWE whatever you want, I'll vouch for you. And so I'm doing all the right things. I was backstage at WWE 4 months after I made my return. So, I mean, I was like, wow. Yeah, I was getting, but then I got to OVW and it was a 10-minute drive from OVW to my house. So why do I want to drive 3 hours to an indie show now? I can just do OVW on Wednesdays. And now I'm the head trainer at the arena that just opened up. Right. So now I'm in the ring 2 or 3 days a week with my trainees. I'm doing my wrestling matches at OVW. I'm doing our SNSs now. Maybe I don't feel like going to an indie show on Saturday anymore. And I was making good money. So I was making good money at doing my training, playing poker, and I was kind of living a cool life as far as personal lifestyle, just naturally being happy. I was wrestling trainer, and poker player. I mean, I'm doing 3 things that I truly love doing. But in the game of wrestling, man, I mean, it's oh, sorry.
Are you good?
In the game of wrestling, I mean, it's a hungry man's game. You got to stay hungry. You got to stay grinding. You got to stay, because it's all about right time, right place.
Sure.
Rob Galway, he's one of my buddies. He came to my training one day. He told every single one of my students, he said, Mitch Huff is better than a shit ton of wrestlers I wrestled in WWE. He just never got the right time. And that's what it is. It honestly is. Right place, right time sometimes a lot. And I got complacent, and I know that now. I look back now and I'm like, man, you were grinding your ass off for 2 years. You were making all these connections, and something was bound to pop. I almost got on Tough Enough. A lot of stuff was coming real close, and then I would just think, oh, it's going to happen. Because I had the mentality of that same kid that tried out for that basketball team. You put me in front of them, I'm going to get signed. That was my mindset. But then I would also that mentality I was talking about earlier. I'd also be like, oh, you're not ready yet. You just get your body a little tighter, get your abs a little harder. I had both mindsets going on where I was like, you're going to get signed, but also you're not all the way ready yet. Right. It's a weird battle because that's probably just a perfectionist mindset, and there is no perfection. You're never always going to be ready. But it probably deterred me once again from getting a contract the second time around. And then to get into later, after that match of the year, long story short, we did they wanted me to take 2 weeks off, come back and do a program with Rump Thump, which is Stefan, who's now a referee for, I don't know if he's AEW now, but he was in
Yeah,
X.
yeah.
They wanted me to do a loser leave town thing with him because he was moving back home. And I was like, man, you want me to go from year, status main event for the title? I love Rump Thumb. I have no problem working Rump Thumb, but at the time, Rump Thumb was losing in 5 minutes every minute on TV. But I was like, we can get there. We really can. We can make it work. That's wrestling. And I said, cool, I'll do it. And then I asked the promoter, I said, well, what's after Rump Thump? That was like, it was going to be a 6-week run. And they go, we don't really know. Like, do you, I kind of worked all their heels at that point. So instead of doing the Rump Thump thing, I said, let me just go away for a couple months and let's get fresh. And I did. I went away for about 6 months that time. And I came back and got this huge pop in December. Because there was another thing. I wanted to come back to heel. Again, this is mindset of mine. I wanted to be a heel so bad. And I thought I was getting a little stale as a baby. Even though the matches were good, I thought the character was getting a little stale. Even though it wasn't, I was still getting it. But in my head, we're just all trying to be better.
Right.
I come back after 4 months off or whatever it was. Place went nuts. And I went, oh, well, they still like me. And 2 weeks later, they bring me back. I do another little surprise comeback where I team with Rebel in a mixed tag match. Whole building's chanting, and one Mitch, whatever. Match was supposed to be about Rebel. I feel bad for her, and I was like, okay, I still got some steam. They called me a week after that and said, hey, we're gonna finally turn you heel like you want. Like, okay, I don't even know if you remember, we did the whole next level thing.
Yeah.
It lasted 3 weeks. There's a whole, we ain't got to get into all that story. But I mean, that was behind the scenes. I was pushing to be turned heel. They finally allowed it, and it went over like a fart in church. But we started to get some momentum, and then there was a disagreement between me and Gilbert, and they were like, we're just going to put the kibosh to it. I mean, that's why it was that quick. It literally was me and Devin were supposed to ramsack the whole pay-per-view, win the tag team titles on Wednesday TV. We won some tag tournament at some SNS. We're supposed to win the tag team titles on Wednesday night, and then we were supposed to be run roughshod with them for a while. We get to the pay-per-view. We do the whole thing. We run roughshod. We do the whole pay-per-view is about us. And then we show up to TV, and they go, "You're losing, and Devin, you're kicking Mitch out of the group." Because it was that quick. And so anyway, then that's kind of when I was like, yeah, let me go. And then me and Gilbert kind of got into it where me and Danny Davis had to sit down. Danny was like, Mitch, why don't you just take a little break? This is pro wrestling. All's forgiven. Everyone, these things happen. Just don't go putting business on social media. Don't do all. I love Danny. Me and Danny have always had a good relationship. And Danny was like, take a couple months off, let everything blow over, and you can come back whenever you want. This is my house. You're always welcome here. This is your home. You're always welcome here. I said, all right. And then Devin got pissed about all that because he wanted me and him to be a team, and he left. But then Devin opened a promotion in Knoxville.
Yeah.
And we were all down there working for a while. And so I did that for quite a bit. And then when I was away, people think I was away. I wasn't always away. I was kind of doing stuff. And then OVW came calling in 2018 or 17, and they wanted me to wrestle Mike Hayes for the OVW title on the Run for the Ropes.
Mm-hmm.
Back again for another fun. And that was fun. I mean, for what it was. But that was the last match that I had before this Gaslight match. And wow. Yeah, it's weird though, because Mike had personally wanted to work me. He asked me to work with him, and I came up with the basic idea of the match, but I hadn't wrestled really in a year. And I was like, cool. And in my head, I don't know if you know that, but wrestling is hard. You got to, especially the style that I wrestle, you got to be in shape. You got 15-minute matches. They're not, you got to be in shape. And, I wasn't 100% confident that I was in that kind of shape. I was training for it, but I wasn't really training for it. I was working hard, but not wrestling training. Mm-hmm. I'd gone to OVW a couple times, done some promos with them, and
got in the ring afterwards, but I wasn't doing much. But in my head, and this is the God's honest truth, I went, well, Mike only has one leg, right? I said, how fast of a match is this going to be pace wise? I was like, it should be pretty easy cardio wise. I mean, I know it's going to be what I'm saying, cardio wise for me. I don't have to go the extra mile like I used to.
Right.
But I still kind of train, but not hard. And fast forward, we get to the match. We do the match. It was screwed from the get-go because it was supposed to be the main event. And Al Snow had just come back in and bought OVW at this time. Al didn't understand the history of like me and Mike being two Louisville guys wrestling at the Derby show. So he wants to put on his normal little carny 4-on-4 match, which you normally would put in that spot. But there was actually a reason for me and Mike to be the main event. We had a shit ton of people coming we had high school buddies coming. Well, they didn't even half the crowd didn't even get there because they thought we were the main event. They put us 4 or something. We were like semi-main or whatever it was. But I'm actually glad because I got in the match and my performance was nowhere near up to my standards. You probably could never tell watching it, but I knew what was going on in my head during the match, and I was like, man, not good. Went over fine. I mean, Al loved it. Everybody, the crowd loved it. But I got to the back. I was like, man, that sucked by my standards. And in my head, I went, this can't be it, right? This can't be my last match. Lo and behold, I started going, no, it's time to I'm ready to come back. Well, I had gone to Vegas the weekend before that show. Mm-hmm. A weekend later, I found out my wife's pregnant. So I went from preparing a comeback to going, I'm going to be a dad.
All right.
Life just changed like that. And I was like, oh, crap. So the next year and a half, it was just all about, becoming a daddy and how fun, scary, exciting all that crap is. And so the wrestling kind of got put on the back burner. We do all that. And then my daughter was born in 2019. So right before the pandemic, we were Rocco and Robbie Walker were in talks to come back to OVW as a group. Yeah, so see, people don't know this. We were coming back as a little group and a heel group. And anyway, we do. Then the pandemic happens, and we're like, okay, well, let's just wait and see. Rocco was a head trainer at LAC in Westport. Robbie was a front desk at the LAC in J-Town. So we had access to gyms when nobody else did. So we were asses off. Like we were going to come back with this great look. We were going to turn some heads. We were brainstorming. Well, then they come back. Well, there's no fans. We were like, can't do it with no fans. That's what we do this for. And anyway, long story short, that gets pushed because we're just waiting. Well, shit, they didn't bring fans back for a year, right? Yeah. So we're waiting, and during that time, Too Tough Tony hits me up and says, "Hey, man," he goes, I need a trainer at the arena. Like Indiana's allowed to bring people back in and wrestlers and so Ronnie is doing the training, but he's got some stuff going on because of the COVID stuff. He can't travel in. Would you like to fill in until he gets back? I said, well, let me come over and just see. I mean, I wasn't sure, but I was kind of thinking, I was like, okay. At first I was like, yeah, because I was planning to come back anyway. So I was going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, do some training, get some in-ring work, and get over to the arena. And they got a nice class. I mean, they got like a really nice class, nice group of kids, Billy Starks, all these, some young, hungry, good, talented people. And it was also, they were at a stage where it wasn't square one. So I didn't have to, I can teach all the bumps and running the ropes and locking up and headlocks and all that crap. But I prefer to do the psychology and this is why you do it. This is when you do it. You're doing it because of this. That's what's my favorite thing about wrestling. And anyway, I just got back into the training part of it. And that's the thing a lot of people don't know is I've been training at the arena since 2020 again. I've been in and around the business and I've been doing agenting for their shows, but I haven't been in the ring. And so yeah, to get back to the whole thing was a long story, but it's
Okay.
I'm planning now to wrestle in front of my daughter. Right now she's getting older. Pandemic's over. We're having shows at the arena. They're having really good crowds. I'm like, yeah, let's do it here. Start thinking, but I'm like, who? There was a guy that I wanted to work, the old student, but he came back. He couldn't get over as a heel. He couldn't get the heat that I needed. So I'm just kind of watching the roster, and I finally find the guy. His name was Adam. Oh goodness, what's his last name? British guy. You know, I'm talking about.
British guy. I'm trying to find.
On OVW a little bit too, but he. I think, but his name, really good guy, right? Good little worker. And I watch him have a match one night where the heat is just sizzling, right? He's got it. And I go, this is my guy. And Tony had wanted me to work him anyways. Well, they have like 4 big shows a year. Well, Tony's like, you got to do it at one of the big shows. You know, this is storytelling. So we're like, okay, we got to set this up. So let's do it in October. Now, this is maybe May of this year. We're going to do maybe an October show. So I've got plenty of time to get in shape. No excuses, because we're going. I told Adam, I said, well, we're going to go 20, 25. Like, we're going to tear this down. In my head, this is my match for my daughter. So I'm like, that's all I care about. But it's also my comeback match, and it might be my last match at this point. I don't know.
Right.
If it is, I want it to be a good one. And we end up starting planting the seeds or coming up with some ideas. And he's like, and then like July, I think, he writes me. He goes, mate, I got really bad news. I went to the doctor and my spine is jacked up. I got to retire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's like, and I was like, no way. And he's like, yeah, I feel horrible for him that his back's all jacked up. And he was a pro soccer player. So he's got a lot of anyway, but, I'm like, well, man, he was like, I'm so sorry, we can't do the match. I'm like, it's all right. But so I'm still like looking at their landscape now. Right. And I'm like, well, who the hell am I going to work in October? And I'm like, there's nobody. At this time, Tank Tolan actually came back in town. Me and him went back to OVW. So this is what gets back to the Gaslight stuff. We go visit OVW. Everybody, greets me with open arms, hugs. Everything's all good. Yada, yada, yada. That's it. And then me and Tank start talking about doing some stuff. Like maybe we'll tag at the arena. Maybe we'll do a match against each other. We're just trying to figure it all out. And man, yeah, lo and behold. So they released that Netflix Wrestlers, right?
Yeah.
I'm sitting at home one. Let me see what's going on. Turn it on. Watch episode 1, 2, whatever. Well, I train like half the people on the show. They come to my training, like Haley.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I know all them, and I've known all this story for a year before it's been broadcast to the public. Like they were telling me this stuff as it was happening.
Right.
But I'm watching OVW's roster as portrayed on the show, and I'm like, man, they're kind of weak in the babyface division, right? Like Shira's not really a great baby. They kind of like him, but he can't talk. Lovable. He's a lovable kid. They did a good job making him, but he's not like this. He'd be better off being the monster heel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, agree.
I think Tony Gunn is a better heel. I don't think Tony's a good baby face. He's okay, but he's way better served as a baby face.
Yeah.
Same as Mr. Spectacular. They brought him. Like, he's obviously a heel. I don't know. But you got to have top babies. And I'm watching, and so I start texting some old buddies at OV that are in charge at OVW, like, hey, who's your all's top baby faces right now? Because I know the show's old. So I'm thinking, like, what's new? When they tell me, Cash Flow, Tony, Shira, or whatever. And I'm like, really? And I was like, you're all a little thin. And they were like, yeah, but this is what we got right now.
Right.
And I was like, man, yeah, blah, blah, blah. That was kind of it. And I was kind of messing around with them. And I texted one of them the week of the Gaslight. And I asked, hey, on what time is your all show on Saturday? Because my family's going to be there. I'm going to come say hello. They were like, 6 o'clock. I said, I'll see y'all there. They said, great. Jokingly, I say, maybe I'll super kick somebody and save the day. Maybe I'll hit somebody with some athletes. They write back, well, I'm booking the show, so maybe, ... And I write back, really? And they, and I just went, okay, this is Thursday night, okay? So Friday, now my freaking brain, the way it works, I'm like, oh crap, if this is really going to happen, I need to like plan it a little bit. I need to tell some people to get a good crowd there. Because this was the other thing. I'm from J-Town, okay? The gas in J-Town. So I knew I could get a really good crowd over there to watch, and on short notice even. And anyway, so I say to him, all right, so on Friday, I text him. I said, hey, were we just bullshitting last night, or are we being serious? Like, because if you're going to use me tomorrow, I said, let me know now so I can get some people there. And he said, no, I mean, he goes, well, Al's booking the show from Pittsburgh or wherever he was. So I don't know, you know how this stuff. And I said, yeah, okay. So I didn't think nothing of it. That was it. I wake up Saturday at noon. Completely different producer at OVW writes me randomly. Hey, man, how you been? Just so you know, I've been throwing your name around a lot in writers' meetings. We want to bring you back as a top baby face.
Wow.
Completely different. Has nothing to do with the conversation that I just had. And I go, really? Because I'm not active. You know what I mean? Like why is my name getting thrown around? And he goes, man, you know, I because he had been to the arena. He's like, you look like you're still in really good shape. You look good. We showed you to Al's, like you look like a star. Bring him in, all this stuff. And so, anyways, he goes, what? And I said, well, man, it's funny. You should bring that up because I was just talking to so and so about doing something at your all's Gaslight show today. And he goes, well, I'm booking the show today now. And he goes, maybe you should. And I said, you know, I'm from J-Town, yada, yada, yada. And he goes, okay, let me, because I've already got my card set, but let me call Al and see what he says. And I said, okay. He calls me back. He said, Al said, bring your gear. Like, you know, you're getting put to work. And okay, but you got to understand, right? I didn't want to wrestle. I wanted to go out at the Gaslight Festival, do a promo, super kick a bad guy, and have fun with the crowd, or be like, you know, be this corner of a young baby face and like put them over. Like I wasn't trying to do anything, and I didn't want them to think I was trying to hijack their show either. Like I don't want them to think I'm coming back and saying, "Oh, put me in the main event of the J-Town show."
Right.
That's not cool either. So, but I thought maybe they thought that because I was always the main event, so or close to it. And so I called him. I said, "Hey, just so you know," I said, "I didn't want to wrestle. I mean, I wanted to do this promo segment. I run the whole thing by him. He goes, I love it, but we got you booked with so and so." And I knew who they were talking about. You go 10 minutes, you beat them with a super kick, everybody's happy. And I said, okay. I knew who it was. I was like, not going to get hurt. Don't have to worry about stuff. I just got to do my part. I knew the dude was going to do his part. I already like he's a pro. So I said, okay, let me think about it. I said, give me 15 minutes. I'm going home. I was at the gym. I said, I got to try my gear on. I got to make sure I look good in my gear. I mean, it's been 5 years. And he goes, all right, let me know. And I called my wife and I said, babe, I said, there might be a change of plans today. I said, I might not be going with you to the Gaslight. They want me to wrestle. She goes, are you going to do it? And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm in shape. I don't know. They want 10 minutes. And she goes, babe, you got it. You look good, I promise. And I was like, I'm coming home to try on my gear right now, and I'll make the decision based on that. Back to that mindset I was telling you about. It was a 3-minute drive home. By the time I pulled in my driveway, I wasn't going to do it. Wasn't going to do it because I was like, I'm not ready. Wasn't going to do it. Not ready. Like, I knew I could do okay. But is this the match I want to do in front of my daughter, though? You know, first match back. I wanted it to be big. And I was like, not going to do it. When I walk in the door, and my little girl comes running up like Christmas morning. She's, Daddy, you're going to wrestle. I get to see you wrestle. And I'm wrestling. And I grabbed my phone. I didn't even try my gear on at first. I just grabbed my phone. I said, I'm in. And because she was like that excited. And so that's why that's in my top matches now, right? Because it was like that anticipation. And anyway, so I tried the gear on. Everything was fine. And I get to the building. And I get a call. Well, this is the best part. Yeah. I get a call from the writer. Oh, your guy canceled. The guy that I was supposed to wrestle canceled. The guy that I was familiar with. You can do that interview segment if you want.
Wow.
I said, nah. I said, my little girl thinks I'm wrestling now. I said, I can't disappoint her. He said, oh, I'm glad. He goes, but I got to put you in there with like a green guy. And I was like, you're kidding me. And I was like, okay. And I said, is he good? He says, pretty good. He's, blah, blah, blah. I'll put you in there with a really good student. And I was like, okay. I said, can you give me one that's athletic? And he goes, yeah. And I said, okay, I'll do the rest. And I just came up with the match like in the next 30 minutes in my head, like, okay. Because again, going back, right? Like to what we talked about earlier, like if you know what you're good at, you know what they're good at, you can make it work.
Right.
And you really get good matches out of people, whether they know that they're capable or not. And I get there, meet the guy, start talking to him, really nice kid. And he goes, I said, what do you do like in this scenario? What would you normally do? He goes, I don't know. This is only my second match. And I went, awesome. In my head, I'm like, I got to carry this kid. But again, when you're a professional, that's what you do. And it went up. Match was awesome. I mean, it really was. The match was a very good match for what it was. I mean, I was told by multiple people that had never seen me work that are new at OVW and in high positions that pulled me aside. And they were like, dude, you all had the match of the night. Like, I mean, it wasn't even close. Like, and I mean, it was just a basic match, but it was good for what it was,
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So anyway, cool. And then I've been in talks with them a lot since, and they have tried really hard to bring me back. They've pitched me all kinds of ideas. I've got pitched to work EC3. They wanted me to come back and work him recently. I don't know if we're skipping ahead here, but basically the point is like I just don't know anymore. Like in my life at this point, like I've been preaching this whole interview. My goal was always WWE, right? Always. That's not my goal anymore. Like as a matter of fact, WWE could offer me a contract right now, and I'd say no. And the reason is not because I'm better than WWE. It's because I'm a realist, and if you get signed to WWE, you have to move to Florida.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not AJ Styles, right? I'm not just going to go straight to the main roster. I'm not stupid. I know that. I can't move to Florida. I've got family issues with mothers and my daughter. I'm not going to pull my daughter out of grandparents' lives. And my wife works for my family's company, and we're in very good spot. Like so there's just that's not even in my wheelhouse.
Right.
So the weird thing, like after that match at the Gaslight, which is probably why this podcast is even taking place, but I got promoters started hitting me up. OVW started, obviously begging me to come, not begging me, but asking me to come back. And I got the itch real bad for like 3 weeks. I was like, I'm in. Netflix, the wrestlers was popping, I didn't really care about getting on that show as much, but just wrestling was hot. OVW was selling out again.
Yeah.
So, all these things, all these dominoes were starting to fall. Where I was like, man, this could be fun. Like, I also, of course, have multiple friends, and I could have went and done Derby City. That was another thing I was kind of waiting and seeing what that was going to be. But anyway, that was, yeah, I mean, but I got I was like, we're going to do it. I'm back. I kind of felt like I'm back. And then something happened, man. Like, it was like, maybe 3 weeks, a month in, where I just kind of was like, am I? Like, I don't know if I want to be. Like, I don't know if I want to do all the effort that it takes to be a professional wrestler. I mean, I turn 38 next month, and I'm very lucky. Like, injury wise, I've never had like a real serious injury. I almost broke my shoulder once, but as far as like neck concussions, really, serious shit when it comes to this. I've been real lucky with that. And I hear podcasts of other wrestlers where they're like, man, it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. My back's killing me, my knees, I got to get stem cell, or all these like, things you got to really think about in if you're a profession. And I don't luckily have that. And so again, do I want to go back in and potentially risk that for what? AEW maybe. And I've got connections at AEW, but I don't know. It's I'm a very like if I do come back, it's gonna be one of two reasons because I'm coming back